So here we are. This is Dan and Matt, the founders of System 3, and we're going to talk about some features and user questions related to our product, Relay.
Yeah.
So one question is like, I have, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding, but could have a better understanding of how Relay actually works. So I could ask you some
Yeah.
questions about
All right.
that.
That sounds good.
All right. So Relay is, just for, you already know this, but for other people, Relay is an Obsidian plugin that makes your Vault collaborative, and it uses CRDTs, conflict-free replicated data types, to do that. And here's my understanding of what's happening. Obsidian without Relay, you've got a note, and there's two copies. There's the note in the editor, like the note, the which is like some temporary storage, an Electron, a browser technology that is like holding the thing that I can see and I can edit. And then there's the note that's saved to disk. And Obsidian is doing something where, like, when I make changes in Electron to the editor every, I don't know, a few seconds or something, Obsidian is syncing those changes to disk or saving those changes to disk. All right, is that right so far?
Yeah, that's right. And they also have a mechanism for syncing edits from disk back into the editor too. So if there's something
Right.
else on your computer that changes something in a file, then they actually run a pretty like complex algorithm in order to get it into the editor.
All right. So Relay enters the picture. So you install the Relay plugin in your Vault. So I get Relay in my Vault, and I add a folder, one of my folders from my Vault, to the Relay server. So now what's happening is that locally on my machine, Relay is monitoring that folder, monitoring all the files and all their contents in that folder. And whenever there's a change to one of those files, I open that file up and I type some words. Relay, monitoring it, uh, grabs these updates and turns them into these sort of commutative CRDT update objects, which I can then relay to the server, and they can get relayed on to my collaborators. And so, but immediately locally, there's now one additional uh, source of storage for this node. There's the disk and there's the editor, the two things that already existed. Now there's this local database of CRDT updates for that note,
Yeah,
for that
that's
folder.
right. And
Okay.
like one way to think
Okay.
about it is like CRDTs are a technology for collaboration by preserving user intent. So like in order to do that, rather than diffing files that have different paragraphs, it's basically character by character. Every time you input some a letter, it's
Yeah.
going into that CRDT and it gets compressed into like runs of letters, and so the CRDT is actually it's sort of more attached to the editor than it is attached to the file on disk, um, and it's basically trying to capture like every keystroke. Um, but you're right that now there's like it
Yeah.
gets complicated. You've got this syncing process between the editor and the disk. You've got the syncing process between the editor and the CRDT, and sometimes we want to like you know sometimes we need to like resolve issues if the file was edited on disk and we need to know whether like which version was correct or what the user intended.
All right. This question uh might not make any sense, but you said that the CRDT record is more associated with the editor than with the disk. I'm thinking of these three entities and how these three entities stay in sync with one another. Is it like, because right, you want to avoid the situation where, like, you've got like a telephone game and nobody can figure out what the real source of truth is. And you also want to avoid the case where, like, entity A says X and entity B says not X, and you just one of those parties' contributions just vanishes. So is there one of these? Is it that should I think of it as, like, I don't know, the editor is like the central node that communicates out to both these?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. Of course, you run into additional problems if the editor is closed, right? Because sometimes you're pulling updates from the server
Yeah.
and now your CRDT says one thing, and at the same time, something's written to the file on disk. And then the next time you open the editor, it says, hey, wait a minute, these two things are different. We've got to figure out which one is right. And that's why we
Yeah,
built the
yeah.
differ.
Okay. Okay. So bunch more questions about that, but let me get the big picture. So, all right. So I get so I've got my folder, I've got my note, I've got the Relay plugin installed. So Relay is monitoring this folder, tracking changes to this folder, and converting them into these CRDT update objects, and then is relaying them up to Relay, the company's servers. There we go. Thank you. And the server is collecting them, and uh basically just holding them in preparation to relay them on to any of your collaborators or your other devices if you want to do it that way. Um,
Yeah,
so
and an interesting note about that
so
actually is
now,
that you know, all things being equal, we'd love to build it to be a peer-to-peer topology so that like, you know, you're sending updates directly to your friends
yeah,
and not going through a central server. But it has this major trade-off in terms of user experience where you can only collaborate if you're both online at the same time. So one of the nice things about this sort of star topology that we use and the value, like you know what you're getting from having a server, is that it's kind of like a super peer. It's not doing anything special, um, but it's also just online all the time. So that's kind of the way to think of it.
yeah, it's kind of like a market maker. It's like, yeah, without a market maker, maybe like I've got a commodity that I want to sell and you want to buy that commodity, but if there's no one that's there, that we
Yeah,
might have a hard time linking up. So, all right, so the picture is locally, I've got my disk, I've got my editor, and I've got my CRDT update database for this node. And then relayed up to the server is just that CRDT update database. And then let's say another collaborator comes online. So let's say I started it, I made a relay server, I add this folder, and then I add you as a collaborator to this relay server. Um, then now, so you've got to have relay, the plugin installed in your Obsidian. And if you do, and you join this relay server, then um, your machine is going to pull down that CRDT update database and then parse that to reconstruct the note, which will show in the editor
that's
and
right.
then save to disk. All right. And so if there's a relay server with a bunch of people editing, like let's say, you know, like us, we have our relay server for our company and we've been using it for, I guess, coming up on a year now. And whenever I go and change a note, that update gets parsed into some set of update objects, sent up to the relay server, held there. And whenever you come online, your system will sync and will pull those updates down, parse them to update the file in the editor slash on disk. And then if everything's working as it should, then you'll be seeing the
Yep,
same file
that's
as
right.
me.
And the CRDT that we use is called
Cool.
YJS. It has a like a two-step syncing process that just uh, like the CRDTs can get large over time, and so it has two kind of features. One is it does kind of like garbage collection to clean up like old stuff that's not important anymore in order to reconstruct the document, but also has a two-step sync process, which sort of like minimizes how much data actually needs to be sent. So when you connect to the server, you say kind of
Hmm.
like it's pretty interesting. Um, it's kind of like metadata about the update records that you have, and you kind of say like, here's the records that I have, and then the server says like, okay, well, I'm not going to send you the ones you already have. These are the ones you don't have, and sort of like sends like a specialized message with just the stuff you don't have. So it's kind of a cool protocol.
Okay. Maybe like one other thing to note here is just why use CRDTs at all? Like I think this is like an interesting uh like it like it seems so straightforward, like a bunch of people editing a document at the same time over the internet. Like why is that hard? And then it turns out to be like a really hard problem because it's like it has to do with like the amount of time that it takes for signals to travel and the amount of time it takes for me to type the next character. And if we're writing at the same time and we're editing the same document, what's the protocol for deciding how to like receive all these updates that might it really feels like thinking about like relativity and like, I
Totally,
don't
yeah,
know, speed of
yeah.
light
It's a
travel.
classic kind of distributed systems problem, and you know, a lot of methods before CRDTs, which are pretty novel, actually, like pretty new research in the last few years. But right, yeah, classic distributed systems problems. You've got all kinds of stuff um, like light time for the message to be travel, like clocks. Like, are you actually you can you actually trust the time on the wall? Like, what happens if your clock is out of date, or you know how in sync do they actually need to be? Um, so clock like wall time, clock time, light travel time. Um, yeah, all of these
Yeah.
like super interesting problems, and that's actually why the CRDT has like you know it's like has a special property of you know being like commutative, so the operations can be applied in different. And it also has this concept of a vector clock, which is like basically its own invented system of time, which is about sort of like relative ordering and doesn't actually use like wall clock time at all. There's no timestamps in the CRDT
Mm,
record, which is like I think really fascinating.
yeah. Cool. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on that someday. Um, but like, yeah, these problems are probably why. So like Google Docs uses a different technology, at least I
That's
think
right.
they still do, right? Operational transform. And then tools like Notion famously doesn't have offline mode or like hacky offline mode. Like you can, if you're using like the web browser version of Notion, you can get whatever note you want open in your browser and then get on the airplane and then it'll like be stored in local cache and it'll try to sync back up when you're back on the internet. But yeah, Notion's famously been working on offline mode and have like promised something recently. But for years, it's been a highly requested
Right.
feature, and it's
Yeah.
probably just the complexity
I
of all
think
these
they are
things.
actually switching to CRDTs, but
Yeah.
they've for a long time, a lot of sort of advanced editor
Wow.
technology uses like, you know, blocks or like blocks that can be nested in a tree, block within
Yeah.
blocks kind of thing. So I know that they use that, and that's how their API works as
Yeah.
well. If you want to like edit stuff, you can kind of like only get the latest snapshot and then try to make an edit to a block, and maybe you're going to run into conflicts, and so you just don't have like you either like overwrite someone's content, or you know you get a conflict error and then you got to resolve it. So um, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Cool. So we got a bunch of user questions that we gathered up that we can process. Let's do privacy first. We had a bunch of good questions about this from a user recently, who I'll call M, from the US. M said, after realizing Relay was exactly what I was looking for, my main concern was privacy. Went to the site, looked around, said, obviously they're streaming my files in part or in whole through a system they control. Is it private? My vault is kind of like documentation of my life, so I have to be careful. How do I know that no one will have access to my files?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the first thing I think people miss actually is that they're sorting our product to Obsidian Sync. And one big difference, well, Obsidian Sync is great, and one thing that's cool about Obsidian Sync is that it's end-to-end encrypted, which is kind of the gold standard and where we'd like to get to eventually. But but one of the things that is different about our product is that instead of sort of like automatically sharing your whole vault, which for me, I don't know about you, but for me has like all kinds of personal content, my journaling, like I don't want that stuff going anywhere.
Mm,
uh, and so our product, instead of
mhm,
being like you're
mhm,
sharing your whole vault, and I think Obsidian now has a way to like opt out of certain folders, but like it doesn't feel comfortably private. So anyway, our product,
mhm,
you have to opt in and you select
mhm,
specific folders,
mhm,
or maybe you create folders that are shared folders. Um, and so you know sort of exactly what's going to get shared. And we care a lot about making things comfortably private. So we try to
mhm.
make that a strong visual distinction in the product, and like make it clear that you're not like, if it's not in this folder, it's not going up anywhere. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I like kind of physical spatial metaphors for that. Like in the real world, if you and I are sitting in a room, like in the house there, we kind of know, like, well, first of all, we know who else is in the room. Like you can just see them. You also kind of people just have a lot of intelligence about like how does sound travel around this space, who else is home, who else is around, and we just have a lot of like it's easy to think about like how much I want to share based on who's listening. If we're in a like public park or whatever, different, but we have a lot of facility for thinking about that. But with digital stuff, may or may not. And so if you don't know, like if you don't know, is this shared or not? Like, where am I? Do I have this in a shared folder, or is this just in my vault? Or like, who's going to be looking at this someday? Then that really can have a chilling effect on what you're able to say and even think, and that effect can compound over time. Because if you don't think that thought on Tuesday, then you're not going to think that thought and the next thought on Wednesday, and then over time you might be in a very different place. And it kind of that's the beauty of Obsidian is that you have this comfort to
yeah.
think in writing really freely.
Yeah, and so right, so our folders are opt-in, so I think that helps a lot with like comfortably private, um, and also like your ability to keep everything in one place. But then also like end-to-end encryption. Why didn't we do that? And I think for me the answer is like, well, it's just kind of a not yet, because the complexity of doing all this CRDT stuff is extremely high. And as soon as you have end-to-end encryption, then um, it becomes basically impossible to debug what's going on. And so I think our strategy has been like, let's make it stable. Let's get it working really well. And all things being equal, like we would prefer to have end-to-end encryption. We have never accessed user data, and we don't want to. And so like it's better for us if we can't. So yeah, I think that's where we're going, and we're just kind of like working on stability and getting the product where we want it, such that we can introduce basically an encrypted channel.
I think similar for self-hosting. Another approach to security privacy is that the data doesn't move through our servers. It moves through a server that you control and we don't have access to. Um, and we have a beta for that, which yeah, like has been kind of on a wish list,
Right.
but yeah, you just sort
Yeah.
of like did some hacking on users.
So a lot of people don't know this, but like so our clients open source. I think most plugins in Obsidian are open source. There's a few rare ones that you know get a pass, but ours is open source, so you can see it on our GitHub. Um, a lot of people don't know that our server is also like the collaboration server is also open source, um, and so that's what allows us to make.
I didn't know that. Is it really?
Yeah,
Okay, but there's some server part that's closed source, right?
that's right. Yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
There's kind of three components in the system, and it's a cool like I've been working hard on this recently. It makes some things harder to build, but it's a cool setup. Where basically, and I mentioned earlier, like I love open source. I want to open source as much stuff as possible. There's kind of like these three components in our architecture that fall out. One is the client. That's within Obsidian. Open source. It's got to be. You got to like be able to read the code and trust what's going on in your Obsidian vault. The second one is the
Hmm.
document server. That one's just like all collaboration goes through the document server. It's like the super peer that's online all the time. And then the third one is basically our authentication, authorization, billing, the part that sort of like makes us a company. And so what happens when you in the we now like sort of offer self-hosting as a beta, and the self-hosting is of the collaboration server. So the way that it works is you host your collaboration server on premise, and we actually don't need to have a network connection to it at all. You host it on your private network at your company, or you're using Tailscale at home or whatever. And what our system does is you log into our system through like OAuth provider, like Google right now is what we support, and so do your collaborators or teammates, uh, and then we kind of have the permission model. So through the UI, you can that's how you're inviting people to your relay server. In the future, we'll support like read only documents and whatever, and we issue basically cryptographic tokens to the users, to the clients, that gives the client access to the document on the server. So this allows sort of like our entity. So this auth and billing server is closed source. But yeah, it basically allows us to kind of orchestrate the collaboration and make it really smooth and centralize sort of the login, so that you're not having to do all kinds of weird like peer-to-peer stuff, which is usually a really bad experience. Um, so we centralize that part, but then basically the clients are open source, the document server is open source, and the client talks directly to the document server. So we couldn't, if your stuff's on a private network, like we're not gonna be able to see your documents. We couldn't look at them if we tried. It's a private connection between the client
Yeah,
and the server.
yeah. Okay, cool. I wanted to ask you this earlier in our meeting today, but so I'll ask you now. Help me get a better sense of what is involved if I want to self-host. Um, what is it that I need to set up? Like, do I need like what would be the easiest way? Would it be I make it like an S3 bucket or something, or like what is the
Yeah. So
what's the easiest thing
right. So the
for?
absolute easiest way, we actually have this repo. It's called Relay Server Template in our organization on GitHub. The absolute easiest way is it's like if you have a fly.io sort of like they're like a infrastructure provider, kind of like AWS, um, but they have a really nice developer experience. So you can host our server. I think it's like 3 commands that you have to run, and like boom, it's up and running, and
Hmm.
it automatically shuts down when it's not in use. So it's like very affordable. Um, so that like I try to make it as simple as possible. And I want to, because I
So
want,
I would
yeah. So
you
that
go ahead.
there's that repo. So you need two things. One is basically need to like download that repo and run the 3 commands in the README to get the server set up. Um, and the second thing is you need like basically a private key from us, which you install on the server, and then that's what allows it to kind of like us to sign document access for users that are logged in to the relay service. Um,
Yeah.
and then there's like in that
Huh.
file. So I think like S3 is better. I highly recommend like backing that server via S3. Um, so there's instructions to do that too. But it's like just a little bit more complicated because you need to have you need to like set up whatever access credentials and set up an S3 bucket, and then plug those access
Mm.
credentials into the sort of server's environment. But yeah, it's
Okay.
like it's all there.
But
So
so cool. So easiest way, set up fly.io, and just I would think of them, I guess, as just a host,
yep.
which, at the end of the line, any company is going to have some set of, well, people working there and policies and values that are going to govern how they look at and sell your data or don't. And I think like Amazon seems pretty unlikely that someone over there is going to be like peeking at your data. Fly.io host, big enough company, like also super unlikely. And then us. I really like the quote that this user was asking, or like the question he was asking in the quote that he gave. He was like, okay, so you guys are two guys, and you say all data access requires approval and is logged. And he was kind of pushing on that. He said, I like that policy, but if this company is just two guys, Latin, I don't know how to say this, custodes, which translates to like who's watching the watchers, who guards the guards. And that got me thinking like, all right, yeah, we haven't yet like really pushed on this and articulated like what does that approval look like? What does that process look like? Um, but my feeling is like our view on that is like basically never. Like only times that I can imagine us looking at someone's data are one, if like they want us to, maybe for some debugging purpose, that would be like a conversation that we're having with them. Or two, if a court makes us, and even then, um, we would probably do all kinds of squirmy stuff to like not actually look at the data. Uh,
We'll comply with
up to the point of like
lawful law enforcement requests. But yeah, I think
squirmily though. Yeah.
yeah, but we don't. Yeah, I mean, actually, I even there was somebody who asked if I could look at the data for debugging, and I said no.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not going to look at user data. But like one way we could do that is if like if somebody's willing to like invite us to their relay, then we're a peer. But yeah, we still we like I want to hold that boundary
Yeah.
of like not going in to the servers and yeah.
I like that. We've got a streak of have
Yeah.
never, like days since last peeked at
Yeah.
users' data is infinite, and we'd like to just
Yeah,
keep that
that's right.
infinite
That's right. And
forever.
okay, so why
Yeah.
why that policy? Why does it say, access requires like approval? Well, it's because like we both of us, you and I have worked at like bigger tech companies, and the sort of gold standard thing here that people do is like SOC 2 compliance, which basically it means there's probably a lot of bullet points to what that means, but the two important things are um, like principle of least privilege. So that means like, if you don't need the keys, you don't have the keys, which is true in our case. You don't have the keys. Only I have the keys. Uh, then the
True. It's true. I
yeah,
couldn't if I wanted to.
but then the other one is approval and logging. And I think that yeah, it's weird to like have we want to like have the policies in place to be SOC 2 compliant. It's like it costs tens of thousands of dollars to get audited, so we'll do that eventually, but not right now. But yeah, we basically want to follow the best practice, and it's a little awkward to do it if you have a two-person company, but I think we are committing to do that. So basically, like we have like a spreadsheet that we can log in of like if we get some sort of request like we are required by law, um, then I will record it in the log and ask for your approval, and you will sign off on it, and then like the two of us will be um, like I don't know signed off. The
Wait.
entire company will
So we
be
both
on board with complying
yeah,
with
yeah.
the whatever the lawful request. But of course, like we'd prefer
Yeah,
if you
we
just self-host. So we can't.
cool, right. We both have to kind of go evil at once
I mean, I think that quote
on a
is
moment.
it's kind of confusing, right? Because we're trying to like do all the right things from the like big company perspective. Um, and
Yeah,
so like eventually we'll get there, but
yeah,
for now it's yeah, you really kind of just have to
totally. And
like at the end of the day, for any SaaS um, that doesn't have end-to-end encryption,
yeah,
it's like yeah, there's a person that you're trusting.
I was at Facebook projects all like WhatsApp, famously end-to-end encryption, Messenger not, projects all over the place to like offload that so that Facebook wouldn't be able to
What
um
you mean?
turn
Sorry,
this
what you mean
over.
is to make Messenger end-to-end encrypted, right? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Offload the
it's like
risk, like it's for companies
yeah,
that. Well, I mean, I don't know about Facebook now. I mean, a lot of these tech companies, it's a reasonable concern to say like if you have your stuff in Google Docs, like are they gonna run it through an AI model or something? Um, but yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of cases, yeah, companies would prefer to have an encryption because you know, well, I for us, like we just you do whatever you're up to, that's your thing. I want you to have full privacy. Like, yeah.
cool. All right. So that was privacy, security, and open source. Anything else you want to add to that, or shall we move on to next topic?
Oh, I think like an adjacent thing here is Obsidian Sync, and I guess I just want to say like,
Yeah. Hmm.
Obsidian syncs and encrypted are like Relay is not, um, but like it's actually like an apples to oranges comparison because like we both of us use Obsidian Sync and love it, and it's like it's great for the use case I would call device sync. So like I've got Obsidian on my phone, I've got it on my laptop, I've got it on my desktop, and I just want the notes to be in the right place, the files to be in the right place, and like
Hmm.
that just works at the file level.
Hmm.
So um, like yeah, I just want the files on all my devices. So that's device sync. Um, but for Relay, it's like it's all about collaboration. Um, and so I also use Relay like for our work Relay server and shared folders. Um, like they have, I want that real time, super snappy shared cursors. I can see while you're typing, um, like sort of experience. Um, and so yeah, it kind of makes sense that they're like targeting a little bit different use cases.
Let's talk about file sync, a more concrete kind of feature that is on our roadmap as actively in development. It's a bit of a beast of a feature. A user I'll call F from Germany says, I think it would be great if there was an option to share PDFs or pasted images. Although I understand this would require way more server space on the backend side, but for work, I think this would be necessary in many cases. And T from France says, would be amazing if I could share PNG/MP4 files. I'm sure it'd be quite hard to keep free that way, though. So, what are we up to with file sync?
Yeah. So I mean, some people who are look at our GitHub know that like actually there's been a branch for file sync for months. But yeah, it is a bit of a beast of a feature. I think in part like we really want to get it right. We really want to make it smooth. Um, and one of the things that's delayed it is this sort of change in our architecture to have the collaboration server be open source. So like actually, I've got a working version of file sync right now, but it syncs files and images through sort of like our centralized auth server, and so uh, the work that I still need to do is basically to move that to the collaboration server so that like everything um, in your vault, all of your collaboration, if you self-host, if you use our on-prem server, like none of the content needs to go through anything that our company owns.
Yeah. And let me check my understanding of file sync implementation. So, what Relay does already is syncs markdown files, .md files, and it does that with the CRDT update process that we talked about earlier. But file sync, like if I want to sync a PNG with you, it's not going to be a CRDT managed process, right? So maybe you can just kind of explain how that works. But my understanding is without the sort of sophisticated high-tech protocol for ensuring convergence, there will be the possibility of deletes. Like, I don't know, let's say I want to change the name of the image while you want to delete the image at the same time, and then our machines try to sync that update. In that case, there's the possibility of an overwrite, and one of our contributions there might get lost.
Yeah,
Is that
that's
right?
right. So with file sync, or like universal attachment sync as we've been calling it, we both want to like expand the types that are supported and provide like forwards compatibility with more CRDT types, like eventually if we could support Canvas. But also, there are these sort of like binary files, images, video, audio, PDFs. Um, we want those to work, but they like there's no CRDTs that work with those types, so they're going to use a different conflict resolution method, just called last writer wins. So yeah, if we both drag in, if we're both offline, we have two separate images, um, and they're both named mat.jpg, and then we both drag them into our vaults and go online at the same time. It's gonna pick one of those. Um, yeah, and
Hmm.
if I then like
Okay.
update, a PDF or something, it's gonna like my write is gonna go out to everybody. And so this does interesting things because like actually, you can sync Canvas files via this mechanism, and you can kind of collaborate, but it's like a lot less nice than a CRDT because you sort of it's sort of like people's
Yeah.
updates can get erased if they're doing stuff at the same time and sort of get overwritten.
Yeah. Well, like so many things in this case, it feels like the long tail is long, or like there's a lot going on in the long tail, and speed of light matters. Like the famous Vannevar Bush, I think it was, the mother of all demos, they call it, in like the 60s, which was like a bunch of people collaboratively editing a document. They weren't using CRDTs, but the reason that worked was because they had like a like terminals and mainframe kind of setup, I think. And the transmission between the user terminal and the central record was so fast that like the change is propagated before I hit the next keystroke, and I don't see any lag with my eyes. But when the distances are a little bigger and you're moving through like internet infrastructure and across the world, then those delays get bigger. So then you need a whole different technology for solving that problem. And so I guess what felt similar to me here is that when it comes to images, the frequency of changes is much lower. Like, the likelihood of us trying to, upload the same an image with the same name, different image at the same name at the same time, or, like, me change the name of the image and you delete the image or whatever. I mean, there's a likelihood of it, but it's just that's an operation that just doesn't occur very often, so the chance of a conflict is lower. Whereas, like, us typing in the same we do that we're constantly typing characters into the same document, including the same
Yeah,
line,
yeah,
and
that's right.
so, like,
Yeah, I mean, in
yeah.
practice, I think it's just
Yeah.
with images and stuff. It's kind of a finished product. It's not in progress. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
works.
Cool. Alright, anything else on file sync?
I guess just to say that something like it's a hard problem. So like if it's a uh, Obsidian Silk Sync. They put a lot of engineering effort into making it a solid product, but it still, I think, doesn't work very well if you have like if you're also running Dropbox or you're also running Google Drive or so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, like some of these systems, they aren't as interoperable as you might hope, and so for that reason, I was just telling a user earlier today, but I run another plugin called Obsidian Git, and I don't use it as like a sync operation through GitHub or anything like that. But it just commits my changes every 5 minutes or whatever, some cadence, and that's been super helpful because like when we're testing
Yeah.
compatibility with Obsidian Sync and Relay. Like some of the old versions, they did not work so well, but like the newer ones, I think they're working better. But it's just nice to have that peace of mind of like I can track that all the change log, and just like know that for sure if I accidentally delete a file or something, it's in there, or like on a smaller granularity, like
Yeah.
if I accidentally delete a paragraph or something, that it's in there.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. I also run that, and what you meant by run that is use it, not that we're
Oh, that's right.
developers of
Yep.
that
Yep.
plugin. Cool. Alright, let's do a scan for what feels interesting.
Oh, I mean, part of it also like, pricing. Like people want to know, like, yeah, they're like, we'd love for you to have
Yeah, let's talk about pricing.
images, but then like but then probably it would cost more to host and stuff like that. And that's true. I mean, actually hosting,
Yeah.
we put a huge amount of engineering effort into um, like server efficiency, uh, because actually for every single document that you open, there's a server running for that document, and it's like a micro server. But yeah, you need um, just one server. Like you need a centralized kind of place where it can exchange, uh, like be that kind of super peer. So we're actually running like a lot of servers in parallel, and it is expensive. Um, but yeah, same thing. Like if we're storing user data, like we're probably going to need to charge for it. And so we've thought a lot about like, okay, well, how do you do that in a way that feels like fair, user friendly, and yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even just like um sort of on the question of why charge at all, and
Oh yeah,
I don't know how
right,
people
right.
might think about that. I like this I like this little essay that Kipano, founder, or not founder, but CEO of Obsidian, put out maybe a couple years ago now, but quality software deserves your hard-earned cash. I'll just read the first couple paragraphs. Quality software from independent makers is like quality food from the farmer's market. A jar of handmade organic jam is not the same as mass-produced corn syrup-laden jam from the supermarket. Industrial fruit jam is filled with cheap ingredients, shelf stabilizers. Industrial software is filled with privacy-invasive trackers and proprietary formats. Google, Apple, and Microsoft make industrial software. Like industrial jam, industrial software has benefits. It's cheap, fairly reliable, widely available, often gets the job done. Independent software makers are small teams that don't have those economies of scale. Yeah, we want to make this financially sustainable. We want to be able to keep doing this. And in order to make this financially sustainable, we have to get remunerated for the work. We have to have an income and live the lives and have to charge for the software. So I think there's like more and less kind of honest and straightforward forms of commerce that people can get into. Maybe honest is too moral laden of a word, but like when you use Google, you're dealing with an advertising company that is, you're there, you're paying with your attention. Google's gonna be trying to sell ads at you. And, if you understand what's going on, that could be a good deal to enter into. People, may or may not understand what's going on. For us, the model that we're choosing is subscription. Will tell you the price and you understand what the thing is. And if you want to pay the price, then you get the thing.
And actually, Obsidian's a huge inspiration for us, right? I mean, their thing is 100% user supported. That's where you want to get to, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, then your incentives are just aligned. Like we just want to build, like my motivation is just like I just want to build cool stuff for people. I like building useful stuff. I want to do
Yeah.
it. I don't want to have like
Yeah.
other incentives like make back
Yeah.
VC money or something like that. I just want to build cool stuff. And if you're willing to like chip into that project, then we'll make cool stuff and it'll be like user centric.
Yeah. Maybe a note there on the question of like um other ways that companies make money, like selling user data, um, and selling the company to someone else who's gonna then sell user data. That's another question that I think the same user asked us about, and we should do some writing about. But like, yeah, selling user data, uh, no.
Yeah.
Am I right
No.
about that? No.
Yeah. No.
Yeah,
We just
no.
don't want to do that.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. Don't want to do that. And then selling the company, that's not the goal
That's
here.
right. Yeah, I think this company will just live alongside us, and if we do different stuff, we'll do different stuff. But like, it's not it's more of
Yeah,
like a lifestyle. It's attached to like us doing the things we're passionate about.
yeah,
And it's not like
yeah.
we were like, hey, what's an idea we could work on that we can flip and make a bunch of money? It's like, no, that's not why we're
Yeah.
here.
I grew up in Chicago. I like the 37 Signals guys who are like big proponents of this kind of philosophy. It's of the lifestyle business, where like in Silicon Valley, the lifestyle business is a little bit looked down on as like, oh, you couldn't like do something big, so you did a little mom and pop shop. And the 37 Signal guys are like, what? Why? That's propaganda. Like we want to like have a good life and make enough money to have a good life, but we want to like kind of do art and like build like our art is like building products and having them be coherent and deliver value to people and kind of like having them be the actualization of our values and our philosophy on the world into something that
Yeah.
people use in the world. And so there's no like, way do we get out of it so that we can then do, I don't know,
Yeah,
golfing
that's
or
right.
something.
And I mean like, uh I feel like the world's a better place when you have like a ton of small businesses building cool stuff for each other. Like I don't know, like
Yeah,
when I was like just leaving a long time ago, when I was just leaving school, like Google was super small and hip and an exciting place to be, but it's just interesting what happens. It's just these conglomerates like higher and higher and
yeah,
higher, and then like internally it's just
yeah,
it's not very coherent, and it's just kind of like what is the thing that binds these people together? And uh I don't know, like salaries, stability, making money. Um, like so, they'll have values. Like there's differences between like working
yeah.
inside of a Google or a Facebook, but like increasingly like less and less, I guess. I imagine. I mean, I don't know. I haven't worked at those companies. I've mostly been at smaller startups, but
Let's talk about specific pricing stuff that we might do. So right now, the pricing model is, well, there's no file sync. There's no universe. It's just markdown file. So that's not a part of the picture. It's, you can make unlimited relays for free, and each relay has up to 3 seats for free. And then you pay for more seats beyond that. We charge $10 a month for up to 10 seats. Um, and I don't know what you think. Should we talk about like pricing models that we're considering for the next
yeah,
round?
yeah, I think that's a good idea, and also like just quickly to touch on like why are we doing it? Like we're not trying to build a like Obsidian Sync competitor. What we're trying to do is make Obsidian useful for companies and businesses and teams to be really effective together. And so
Yeah,
that's why,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
like that feeds into our pricing model or something. Like, we're not trying to compete with a specific other thing and go feature by feature. Like, we just have a different philosophy on like what will be useful.
Yeah, this is something I get really excited about. That Obsidian has been a really wonderful tool for me personally as a way to like um get do a bunch of writing in a with an organization that feels really natural to me. And so I build this like edifice of thoughts in Obsidian, which yeah, I don't personally use the term second brain, but feels something like that. Feels like an assistive tool that lets me think farther about things and come back to those things, like build on my own thinking over time, like over the course of years.
And by the way,
And
you've been taking
um,
notes for like literally like 20 years or something. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I started in uh college, I guess, with paper, and then it was like Notepad on Windows, and then a bunch of tools over the years, Evernote and OneNote, and a bunch of like
But
come and go
I don't just
apps.
mean like you're a note
Um,
taker. Like that's who you are. I mean like you've been like like these things have been compounding. Like you've got notes today in your
yeah,
Obsidian Vault that you imported
yeah,
from something that's been exported and imported multiple times between all the products. Like you are
yeah,
living the
yeah.
file over app
And I,
like value within Obsidian because you yeah.
yeah, I did lose like maybe 5% of the notes at the last round of export import from Evernote to, and then like some of the formatting, like the links. But yeah, I just finished like a big import finally of everything going way back. And yeah, it's wild that I just like while I'm writing now, I sometimes like I start a new note. I'm like, oh, I wrote about that 12 years ago. No recollection of writing about that whatsoever, but then I can build on that thing rather than starting a new one. It's cool. Yeah, but then this team idea, like, so yeah, it's a meme. It's a bit of a dogma in the Obsidian world among the Obsidian community that Obsidian is a single player tool. And even though Obsidian itself is working, like has multiplayer features for current Obsidian Sync and has on their roadmap multiplayer, like an improved multiplayer, which they've spoken about here and there, and it is going to be something similar. They're using CRDTs to do proper real time multiplayer. So when that happens, I'm hopeful that I expect that that'll start to change the course of the community's perception of Obsidian as a single player to a multiplayer thing. I mean, my view is like thinking. Obsidian is a tool for thought, and thinking is so inherently multiplayer. Like even when we're thinking by ourselves, not really. This psyche that I have is full of ideas that are just like we're in some mesh, we're in some web of ideas stretching back all the way to the beginning of time. You were talking this morning about how your kids at a school where there's a culture among the kids that they have like a song that they sing and they transmit this to the next generation. And the teachers are like can't stop it. Um, yeah, Kipano was on the CEO was on a podcast recently and estimated that Obsidian has about 4 million active users. To me, um, I think we're in the early stages, like, kinda still the early adopter period of the Obsidian curve. Who knows? Technology's changing fast, everything could go a totally different direction, but, certainly the growth is not, decreasing, it's increasing. You can look at the download rate of plugins overall for the ecosystem in our observatory tool to get a sense of that. Um But I think, like, the big unlock is multiplayer. Maybe the biggest one is, like, can you use Obsidian at work? No? Well, I mean, most of my day, that's where I do most of my, like, thinking on paper is at work, so then I have to use something else. But if you can use Obsidian for work, especially, like, I don't know, small teams, startups, and you can get those benefits of Obsidian, where Obsidian lets you think further, think more clearly, sharpen your thinking, to use their phrase, um, and and constantly be, like, kind of resonating with your team to build your team's sort of personal mimetic system that lets you think very clearly about whatever domain you're operating in. I think that, that's gonna be really powerful, those teams are gonna perform really well, and I think, like, very cool that you can do that in a way that has all these values that we like local first and file over app. So it's like, I don't know, work it out with your company or your teammates, but, like, the it doesn't have to be the case that every bit of thinking and writing you did while you were at that place then is gone when you leave that place. It may be that you have like you might have a work vault and a personal vault, but set up a bridge relay between those two, so that for whenever you're like on the job, but you're doing like more broad philosophical thinking about principles that apply at work, but apply in other places as well. And there's no like, I don't know, nothing, no proprietary data belonging to the company that you have to worry about exfiltrating. You might make those notes in that shared relay so that, you know, even when you're not at that job anymore, when you go back to your computer at home, that thinking is all there. Um, so yeah, the team thinking with the preservation of all those
Yeah, and
values, I
also
think is
like
really exciting.
one thing that it's interesting is thinking about sort of the strategy of like what you set out to do. Like you could start and try to build Notion and be like it's inherently a tool for teams or something. But then you start getting this sort of like a little bit like corporate centric. Like actually it's about what the company wants,
Hmm.
and if and then like, oh, it turns out that people in companies make decisions for everybody. So like you don't actually need to convince the users that Notion is the best tool. You just need to convince the one person who's going to like subject everyone to using this one tool. Um, so I think it's been kind of cool to
Yeah,
like go in the opposite direction of just be like Obsidian has all these like value aligned features, and more than that, just like feel like it just feels good. It makes me want to write when I'm using Obsidian in the way
yeah,
that other tools
yeah,
just don't. And I
yeah,
don't know what it is. Maybe it's like the
yeah,
the millisecond lag between when I hit my key and it's got to go through like some website over the internet, and like I don't know what it is, but like I think the important thing is that people actually like want to use the thing and will write, right? Because like that sort of knowledge edifice that the team comes up with, all the things that they build together, like any sort of like whatever, a 10% reduction for everyone of like, I don't really want to do this, or like a 90% reduction, like your content's just gonna like suck. So
yeah, yeah. And I think a related thing, like part of why it's fun for me to use is that I like the company. I like and trust Obsidian
yeah,
and the people that work there. Uh, and I like their values, and I like the way that Andre Karpathy said it in his tweet a while ago. That was like a love letter to Obsidian. He described Obsidian, the software, as like pretty close to the cutting edge as far as like a philosophy of what software can
yeah,
be. That seems right to me. That and I guess that's part of why I think like we're in the early adopter period, because like the philosophy is right.
that's right.
It's got the right commitments. Yeah. Maybe one more thing. This is I know we're on tangent from pricing here, but is about why Obsidian is great is extensibility. Is like I don't want Notion to figure out how I'm going to use AI and how they're going to price it. I want I just don't it's not I don't trust their design team. I don't It's not that their design team's bad. I'm sure they got a great design team. But nobody knows how this stuff is gonna be used yet. I wanna be able to experiment and tinker and build stuff and try things and then throw them away. I wanna be able to, like, hear what other people are doing and then try that. Um, so yeah, the Obsidian extensibility through plugins has been great, and Obsidian is like the main way that AI has gotten into my life. I've been using language models heavily through the text generator plugin, which, maybe someday I can show off. But yeah, just like, well, just I just use it very casually, but it's really grown in my life, and that's, I don't know, I think that's the way it should be. So AI is one example, but extensibility, like just being able to hack it up
Yeah.
for teams
Yeah,
to be
and
able to
I
hack it
just
up.
imagine like as a software
Yeah.
engineer, like if I'm if I was at a company that, well, I am at a company that adopted Obsidian, but you could many of these companies have like internal tools teams. Um and like just imagine you have a team and it's
Yeah.
just writing they're just writing plugins that like make Obsidian awesome for like everyone who works at the
Yeah.
in the same way that
Yeah.
like every
Yeah.
company I've worked at where like people use VS Code or whatever, the tools team is like building VS Code plugins to like make quality of life improvements for all the developers. I just imagine the same thing, just like all these, very specific niche, like specific to the company probably, um, just like little mini plugins that make using the software just delightful. Yeah,
Hmm.
but yeah, back to
Yep.
pricing. We should probably wrap up because it's been a long session. But yeah, I don't know. What were you thinking? Like about pricing?
Um, yeah, well, so different models for how this could look, but one idea is trying to figure out how to charge for professional use while keeping it either free or cheaper for personal, private, recreational use, which is a standard way to do pricing discrimination. And yeah, there are questions like, all right, well, we could kind of pin pricing to costs to us, like as we introduce file sharing, as the user I quoted earlier noted, that's, costs are going to go up to store image files or whatever versus text files. Could be, but even then, it's a little arbitrary. Like, I don't know, if you buy the homemade jam, the grandma, she might be pricing it, based on her ingredients. But another way to look at that is like, what does it cost her to live the kind of life that she wants to live, and will the market support charging the prices for that? Um,
I mean, it's the same thing. Like Dropbox is more expensive than AWS S3, right? Because like Dropbox is a product company. They try to make it. They want you to have a really nice experience
yeah,
and forget about files. And AWS is an infrastructure company, and they want to have like
yeah,
150,000 customers,
maybe,
like all, and they're just selling them hard drives, like connected to the network.
yeah, and maybe that's the most important thing there is basically incentives. Like, if you do like a cost plus thing, then you're kind of incentivized to like, well, I guess we should get our costs up so that we can charge more
Yeah,
and make
yeah,
more.
right. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and not that people would think that way explicitly, but that, people, systems do evolve in the direction of their incentives. So,
yeah,
I think what I'd like for the incentives to be is like build great shit, build software that people love, um, and
yeah.
be able to keep doing it.
Yeah. So I think like for that reason, I mean, our current pricing is not great just because it was like I was trying to do the easiest thing, right? Like to get Stripe set up, and so it's kind of a weird jump, like to go from 3 free users, suddenly you got to pay for 10, but they're really cheap per use. Like, right, Obsidian
Yeah,
Sync requires everyone to have a subscription, and each subscription is like at least $4. I think if you have the pro, it's like $8 or whatever. So it's $8 per seat, and it starts at, there's no free seats. Whereas like for us, it's like if you have 10 users, for $10 right now, it's like $1 per seat. Um, is like
yeah,
10x or
it's very cheap.
8x, whatever, 4x
Yeah,
cheaper. And so it is cheap, but like also people don't like kind of like, well, I have 3 users and now I got to go to 10. Like it's me and my
yeah,
buddies, and
yeah,
like we're not 10 people. So I think but another way to look at it is like seat based pricing is good
right,
because like if you're trying to sort of like have people um pay you for the value that that you're providing in their life, if you're a like um the scale of what you can achieve is often sort of related to the number of people that you have doing a certain thing. So if you got 30 people working on something, it's a real project,
yeah,
and usually it has a real budget, and coordinating 30 people successfully in a tool that they love is I think worth a lot.
yeah. And I like the
So
incentives there for us too. It's like, if you're looking at, if you've got like a set of 5 people that are using Obsidian, and you look at adding another 5 or whatever, and you're like, I don't expect that the value that I'm gonna get is pays for the cost of Relay, then cool. We'll take that feedback that, not yet ready. Whereas like what I would
yeah,
hope would be the case would be like those 5 people are like, guys, this is way better. than the other thing. Look at what we could be doing if we're all in this together. People try it, they're like, indeed, this is much better, and so more people are wanting to adopt it, and whether they're paying for it themselves, they're paying. It's like there's a central payer. That the incentives are all right. That people are like, great, this is obviously worth it.
Yeah. The other thing that I think has been really interesting for us to consider on pricing is on-premise hosting, right? Like we support on-prem. Usually a company like Atlassian or something, like they charge you through the nose to do on-prem. Usually it's like a super enterprise feature and you might have to like go through some broker in order to get like self-hosting and like so and that's the way these things have kind of gone with SaaS
Yeah,
companies. But on the other hand, I'm like I want like if you have the technical skills to self-host, I want you to self-host because it's great. It's better for me. It's better for you. Like, um, and so if you're self-hosting your collaboration server, then you've got your own S3 bucket. Then you've got like whatever storage you want to pay to S3. That's great. I'm happy with like I don't care if you want to have your entire movie collection within Obsidian or something. Um,
yeah,
I don't know why you do that, but I wouldn't stop you. But if so anyway, long story short is like that's sort of this conflict between like pricing and privacy. Typically that would be like an enterprise feature,
hmm
but I would really like us to offer it at a much lower rate so that it's a no-brainer for people who can do it. It's like really accessible for them. um yeah.
yeah. Um, we're we're still cooking up plans and inviting feedback. So come on to the Discord, discord.system3.md. And yeah, this feels like a pretty good place to wrap. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean the other thing we're collecting a bunch of feedback on in Discord is other like login providers.
Oh yeah,
So if you have thoughts about like login providers right now, we just have Google or pricing, or just general feedback about the product and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to have you join. It's just like discord.system3.md will give you sort of the invite, and then
Yeah.
you can join.
While we're there, let me just say a word about our login. So current setup is to create an account. You got to create an account to use Relay. Only identity provider is Google. That is something that we've done not because we think Google is great and that's what we want to have, just because we're a startup and we're still relatively early and we haven't gotten around to adding more login options yet. It is. I mean, we can just say it explicitly. Like it is like um, not aligned with our ideals to have Google be the only identity provider. It creates a sort of like platform lock-in, and it's like, what if Google decides one day that they want to ban your Google account? Now you can't use Relay. I guess then there's like Google specific, um, uh, people have different kinds of qualms with
Misalignments.
misalignments, yeah, and maybe that's
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
you know, kind of general enshittification as things get big. Google is not the startup it used to be. I personally am like have been kind of across the board beginning an effort to like get myself a little bit extracted from all these Google products.
Yeah. At the same time, like I feel a little bit stuck on it because it's just such an like I feel like social login is great. It's nice to have a bunch of identity providers, but the user experience of like going to the page, especially if you haven't used something in like a little while, you go to the page and you're like, wait, did I sign up with this service using Google or GitHub
hmm
or Microsoft? And then like because they try to make it really streamlined, the only way to check is to like click on it, and then like suddenly now you have two accounts, and then the next time you forget, you go in and you're like, wait, I do have an account, but like all my data's gone. So like it's just an awful like
Yeah.
there is some I mean there's sort of like no great solution, I think, because um if you're gonna have one identity provider, you have a nice experience, but you need to pick the one that is people are most likely to have. So you have to pick the most popular kind of like behemoth of a software company. And yeah. And but if you're gonna have multiple, then you're gonna have this problem of like, you've got 15 different things. It's not a very nice situation. And then the other solution is like direct sign up with passwords, but like password managers don't work in Obsidian, and now you got to spend your time fighting bots and spammers, and you've got to spend your time helping people who forgot their password to like log into the service.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I think yeah, we're kind of navigating that space, and we'd love to hear your feedback if
Yeah.
you have any ideas. We were considering other things like OIDC and passkeys. So anyway, yeah, jump into the Discord and let us know if you have thoughts on that.
All right. Cool. good spot to wrap it.
Let's
Good
wrap it.
talking.
All right. Yeah, cool. Have a
Peace
good
be with you.
weekend.
Yeah.
Later.